What is up, health enthusiasts? It's Coach Lambie here for Working Weights LLC, your guide to strength, health, and all things nutrition. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dwayne Ulrich, aka Poppy Dwirl.
Hey.
And today we are going to find out if coffee is healthy.
The one day I start the podcast without a cup of coffee.
Oh, you didn't have coffee today?
I had a coffee, but I usually have a coffee right here during the podcast. I'm like, man.
Come on.
You should have warned me a little bit about this episode, because man, I've got definitive ideas.
Well, we're gonna get into it.
But
first.
I don't know, probably in the laundry.
Check the laundry.
Then it's probably in the other laundry. I don't know, I can't keep up.
Well, hey, as soon as I finish the lawn, I could throw a couple loads in.
No, babe, it's not just the laundry. Everything's a mess. I think we should just get a cleaner.
Oh, no, we do not need a cleaner.
Why? We have 4 kids. It's messes everywhere.
Listen, my parents didn't have a cleaner, and they didn't even have daycare.
And also, both of them didn't work.
All right, you know what? Let's get a cleaner.
Really?
You know what? I think I might even know somebody.
Who? You're so funny, aren't you?
Yeah, hi, I'm calling to inquire about your cleaning services.
Oh my gosh, you're cool.
Whoa, that's inappropriate. Can I talk to your manager? Oh, I think that's for me. Yes, hi, I'm just calling to let you know that one of your employees has some pretty colorful language to me. Oh my gosh, they did? I am so sorry. That is completely unacceptable.
Look at the flames.
Well, that'll work. Yeah, hi, I'd like to book a cleaner immediately. Okay, cool, thanks.
Hey,
That's
babe,
awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome, dude.
Here's one I sent to her. Oh man, did you see him hit that?
I did, dude.
Oh goodness.
Strangely enough, that looked like you and Christy from a distance, bro.
Let's see. My kid was upset because I took away her iPad, and she was like, I bet when you were a kid, Grandma let you have your iPad. And I was like, oh, bad word. Grandma didn't even let me have my feelings. Oh, yeah. Yeah, women have no flaws.
Good Lord, someone for me up and never shot me. Oh my.
Okay, well. All right, I guess that's enough husband bashing today. Thanks, wife.
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. I saw a thing on the television the other night where this lady she got upset about something about her husband. She wanted to buy some patio furniture, and he started to say something about it, and it just went terribly wrong. And then the newscaster that was reporting this little tidbit of news story was like, she asked her cohort, or her partner there, who's a guy, about how do you feel about just your wife being able to go out and buy, patio furniture? He said, anything that has anything to do with outside, it's okay. My wife can do whatever she wants to, because we know who, kind of rules that roost. And it's like, I look over at my wife, who has these magnificent raised beds that we built out in the backyard, and I look at her and she's going, she goes, baby,
yeah.
I'm growing vegetables out there, so when the food apocalypse happens, so we can feed ourselves. How do you argue with that? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cucumber a day.
Cucumber
Keeps
a
the
day.
doctor. Yeah.
It's that old joke. I'm starting a garden. I'm $550 in, and I'm 2 weeks away from having 25 cents worth of vegetables. Oh.
You know, my wife listens to our podcast. I better be backing it down
No,
just
back it down,
there.
back it down, back it down. All right, man. Coffee and health. So
Yes.
you've asked this question a few times, right?
Mhm.
And I have a lot of clients who, worry about it, and you get a lot of information online too, and it seems kind of murky. Is coffee good for us? Is coffee bad for us? What's the deal? So we're gonna look at a few things today.
You know, even part of that question was, what is the effect of coffee on your workout? Pro or minus? We've had that conversation.
Yeah. So I didn't even bother to pull something like that up. But that would be more in line of like caffeine in general.
True, true.
We can tackle that another day.
All right, excellent.
All right, man. So yeah, so we're looking at this first meta-analysis here is from 2013. Okay. And it looks at coffee consumption and total mortality. Now, total mortality is something we would want to be concerned with, right? So
Yes.
this one looks at 20 studies, 973,000 participants, about 130,000 deaths included in this. All right. And they looked at coffee consumption. High versus low led to about a 14% lower risk. So higher intakes of coffee versus lower intakes of coffee led to 14% lower risk of total mortality. And they defined high as about 2 to 4 cups per day. But
Wow.
they did find that pooled analyses went all the way up to 9 cups. So between 2 and 4 cups a day. And then there was also some that looked at like 5 to 9, and the relative risk was about the same for those. So from 2 cups a day all the way up to 9 cups a day had about a 14% lower risk of total mortality.
Hmm.
Results were a little lower in the US. So we're seeing we're seeing larger risk reductions in different countries, particularly Europe and Japan. But in the US, it was about an 8% lower risk. All right. And this also included decaf coffee. So both caffeinated and decaffeinated.
Well, the conversation there would be also, and not for this moment, but something else to look at is like, what are the contents? Is decaffeinated coffee actually devoid of caffeine or just a much
No,
lower level?
it has a much lower level.
Got
And
it.
so that difference in the caffeine, and we can see that there's really no difference in outcome on total mortality between the two. So caffeine isn't the thing that's driving total mortality in that, right? Or the
Right.
reduction in risk from total mortality.
Right. Right.
So up next here, 2024 umbrella review on coffee consumption and health more broadly. Now, and this is the first time we're looking at an umbrella review, and somebody might ask, well, what the heck is that? So we have meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And then we have meta-analyses of meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And we have scoping reviews, narrative reviews. An umbrella review looks at a whole bunch of meta-analyses and systematic reviews. And it kind of like compiles all that information and gives us an umbrella view of what's happening within the literature, right? So when we have a meta-analysis, it might look, so the last one had 20 studies in it, and we've seen some with like 7 or 8. And then you have meta-analyses of meta-analyses, and those might include a smaller number of meta-analyses. So it looked at a meta-analyses of meta-analyses, looked at 20 meta-analyses. This umbrella reviews take large magnitudes of these meta-analyses and reviews. This one had 201 meta-analyses looking at 67 unique health outcomes. And then there were 17 meta-analyses on 9 other unique outcomes. So you can see umbrella, right?
There's a lot of data there. Yeah.
Right. And so coffee consumption more often was associated with benefits across a range of outcomes. High versus low, any versus none, and 1 extra cup a day is the things that they were looking at, right?
Mhm.
So lowest risk of was at intakes of 3 to 4 cups a day versus none. Okay. So we have some concordance here between the last meta-analysis and this umbrella review, right? So around 2 to 4 cups per day was about the average in that last meta-analysis. And this one, they're seeing 3 to 4 cups per day had the lowest risk. And this is included a 17% reduction in risk of all-cause mortality, a 19% lower risk for cardiovascular mortality, and 15% reduction in cardiovascular disease. Those are pretty big numbers.
Massive.
Yeah. So high versus low intake was associated with an 18% lower risk of cancer.
On the lowest, 3 to 4 cups a day,
3 to 4 cups a day. Yeah.
18% lower risk of
Yeah.
cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Most of the harmful associations. So people have, we're going to talk about harmful associations or harmful effects of coffee, but in this umbrella review, they found that most of the harmful associations were nullified after adjusting for smoking. And so coffee and smoking do kind of go together. There does appear to be risk for pregnant women. And some of these risks include not so much for the women, but for your children, include low birth weight, preterm birth in both the first and second trimesters, and pregnancy loss. So, for most people, coffee seems to be pretty good so far. Pregnant women, probably not so much. And up here, we didn't go through the last one. We could pull that one up, but we can see here in this umbrella review. So high versus low coffee consumption with multiple health outcomes. We can see favors coffee, favors no coffee, and we're getting a large effect. So again, these lines here coming off the boxes are point estimate. The line is our confidence interval. And if the line crosses this one, it's not statistically significant. And we can see favors no coffee, a lot of non-statistically significant effects. Favors coffee, we have a lot of statistically significant effects there. Scrolling down, we can see this again. Right. And this is looking at 1 extra cup of coffee a day in associations with multiple health outcomes. And you can see all the stuff that they're looking at here. So low birth weight, lung cancer, pregnancy loss, bladder cancer. And then in our benefit, chronic liver disease, cirrhosis mortality, cirrhosis, liver cancer. So coffee looks to be pretty good for liver, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Go up to the chart before that. There's a giant line there at endometriosis.
Yeah, endometriosis. So this is, you see those
The confidence
confidence
line.
intervals sticking way out there, like,
Yeah.
we're not going to have too much confidence in what that is.
Right.
Yep. And so scrolling down, and so changes in blood pressures here. So small, non-statistically significant changes in blood pressure, probably not going to be clinically meaningful. All right, so decaffeinated here, and we can start to see this effect on blood lipids. All right, so I think this one had, oh yeah, this is for preterm birth and small gestational age.
Now, hey, but we're going back to the you don't have to go back to it, but the decaf, where it had all this stuff that favors no coffee, but the giant confidence levels. So you could look at that and go, yeah, decaf is better for you, or no coffee is better for you. But those confidence levels were huge. So that's not really, you can't really go for that statistically. That's not going to have a lot of weight.
Yep. So going back to this first one, and we haven't gone over how to go through a meta-analysis yet, but
Yep.
this, when you look at a meta-analysis, this is kind of what we're paying attention to, these graphs right here. This is called a forest plot. And what we're looking at, so a meta-analysis will combine the effects of all of these studies that it looked at to give us an overall effect. And I can't highlight that. Okay. down here. And so what we're looking at, the overall effect is represented by a diamond, and sometimes they're filled in black, sometimes they're not.
Mhm.
But the horizontal points on the diamond would represent the confidence intervals of this overall effect. And we can see in this meta-analysis, very, very small confidence intervals here for the overall effect, right? And it
Right.
favors coffee. We have a lower risk reduction. Something else to pay attention to in a meta-analysis would be this I squared number. This represents the heterogeneity. So how different are the studies that are combined in the meta-analysis? So from 0 to between 30 and 40% is considered low heterogeneity. So those studies are very, very similar. And then 30 to 40 to up around 70, 75 would be considered moderate. And then above that would be high heterogeneity. So this is at the higher end of moderate heterogeneity. So, you know, there's a little bit of reason to lower our confidence in these results. However, the confidence interval on this, right, leads us to have a little bit more confidence in it. Another one, systematic and review and meta-analysis, again, this year, of prospective cohorts looking at 6 different beverages on cardiovascular disease and related mortality. 20 studies were included, and overall, they found that long-term coffee consumption, let me scroll down here. Long-term coffee consumption was related to reduced cardiovascular disease mortality in men, but not so much in women. And now the reason that they say not in women, so if we look here, highlighted in yellow, reduced cardiovascular disease related mortality in males, we have a hazard ratio of 0.63. So it's almost a 40% reduction
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
cardiovascular disease related mortality for men.
Yep. Yep.
And then we see 22% reduction in females. Now they're saying they didn't find it in females because of the confidence interval, right? Because it stretched from 0.06 all the way up to
1.02.
1.02. So
Wow.
just crossed that null line. But I mean, you know, look at that hazard ratio. Like,
Yeah.
that ain't
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. No. No.
All right.
And by the way, and the thing is too, I was just reading a couple of lines up from there.
Mhm.
Is this study set was particularly including sex differences.
Yeah.
So that was one of their main goals too.
Yeah, they did look at sex differences, and of course, you know, I think we would expect to see particularly cardiovascular disease related mortality. If there's a reduction, it's probably going to be higher in men than women.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
going down, long-term consumption of tea was associated with lower cardiovascular mortality in all adults. So
Excellent.
statistically significant for both sexes. Higher alcohol intake linked with higher stroke in both men and women. Not surprising to anyone, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sugar sweetened beverages linked to higher mortality, and juice, so fruit juice and energy drinks, don't have enough data to draw conclusions. So, all the people out there making claims about energy drinks on your health or mortality are drawing some spurious conclusions there.
Is that a health drink you're drinking right there, Coach? Before you answer,
It is a monster energy drink.
So it's interesting is look at the health the hazard ratio on so alcohol hazard
Mhm.
ratio of 1.44.
Mhm.
That's huge. Females pooled hazard ratio of 2.26.
2.26.
That's right, 2.26. Sugar sweetened beverage hazard ratio 1.31.
Yeah.
That's higher than alcohol. Yeah, higher than pool. Is that right?
No,
No.
it's pretty close.
Pretty close.
So,
Pretty close.
so for men, so alcohol for men, so alcohol and stroke for men, we have a 44% increase in hazard ratio. And
1.44. Yeah.
yeah, the confidence intervals are a little wide on that
1.06 to
to
1.94.
1.94.
That's huge.
females, there is a 126. Let me repeat that. For women, the effect of alcohol on stroke is a 126% increase in the hazard ratio.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Confidence intervals, again, a little wide. However, the p values on both of these statistically significant. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And then sugar, 31% increase. So, sugar sweetened beverages almost, sugar sweetened beverages and cardiovascular disease related mortality is almost as high as alcohol intake and stroke.
Yeah.
All right. So, and
Yeah.
then the confidence intervals on the sugar sweetened beverages, 1.16 to 1.4, like that's pretty tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty darn tight. And scrolling down here, you can see the forest plots here, coffee consumption and overall cardiovascular disease related mortality. And we see these black diamonds here, right?
Mhm.
Off to the left. This one, you can see that horizontal tip on the black diamond over the one. So statistically non-significant on that one. Alcohol consumption and overall cardiovascular disease related mortality. We can see they're all on the right side here.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Alcohol and coronary artery disease. So this one, this one's a little interesting, right? They found a little bit of a reduction there. That's kind of wild.
But on
All
stroke,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
That's
that
weird.
I squared 48%. So alcohol consumption and ischemic heart disease in both sexes. Down here, tea consumption. Look at that. Look how far away that is from that. No,
That's
that's way over
amazing.
there. Sugar sweetened beverages, way over here. Look how tight that confidence interval is.
Yep.
Yep.
That's interesting. What are the properties of tea that make that so much? I mean, it's slightly better than coffee, but they both have caffeine in them. So I
They
wonder what
both
is it
have
about?
caffeine.
What's
Yeah.
but
So there's they share some similarities in the fact that they both contain polyphenols. All
okay,
right.
okay,
Which are some compounds in plants that we know have some positive effects on our
yes,
health.
yes.
And then let's talk about the coffee here. What might be different about the coffee from the tea that you're asking? So one of the major negative things that we see well, I guess it's not too major, but the negative thing that we really see from coffee is that it can actually increase your cholesterol. And that is due to, I believe they're called tannins. Okay.
Okay,
So
but coffee has tannins also.
yes, coffee has the tannins. Tea does not, or you know what I mean? The amount is very, very minimal.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay. So, but there's a caveat to the coffee. All right. So coffee can increase total and LDL cholesterol in some people. It doesn't happen in everybody. All right. The effects are only found in unfiltered coffee. So if you remember back to way back, we went over the Nordic dietary guidelines
Yes.
and they recommended filtered coffee, filtered coffee, filtered coffee. Well, here, that's why. Unfiltered coffee. So like if you're having a French press, or an espresso or something like that, that's unfiltered. That can have negative effects on your cholesterol.
Wow.
All right. And if we
You know
look,
what's
yeah,
I'm sorry, I
go
didn't mean
ahead,
to
go ahead.
jump in, but I'm just thinking about it's amazing to think when you're talking about filtered and just you wouldn't think, but the
Yeah,
average filter is not,
yeah,
it's not that. I
it's a
mean,
piece of paper.
yeah. So I mean, the seepage is huge. So what does that say about tannins that can be
Yeah,
filtered out of a drip coffee?
yeah. So they're pretty big, and I think like the darker and the more oily the coffee is, the higher the
Yes,
tannin level is, and
yes.
unfortunately, like that's the coffee that I absolutely love.
Me
Uh,
too.
However, like I have done some self-experimentation and it doesn't seem to affect my cholesterol very much. So I
Good to
have it.
know.
I
Good to
yeah,
know.
I try to have the filtered coffee as much as I can. I do love espresso, Americano, The French press, Turkish coffee. We had the Turkish coffee. Remember that? Ooh, man, that
So
stuff's
hard to
good.
drink. The only good Turkish coffee I've had is yours because I
Hmm.
went somewhere else and I had one, and all I could get was about a sip, and then I was into the grinds. I'm like,
Yeah. Well, it has to be fine, you know. If they don't grind it up really, really fine,
oh, it
then it
wasn't
makes for
ground up.
terrible, terrible
Hated it.
Turkish
Hated it.
coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the strongest effects on cholesterol we see are in people who are already hyperlipidemic.
Yeah.
All right. You already have issues with your cholesterol.
Right.
And this makes sense. This is consistent with other things that we see across different things. So, you know, the closer you are to being diabetic, if you do something that increases the risk of diabetes, you can see that that risk is higher than if you were farther away from that cutoff. All right. And the same thing's happening here. And you can see it in the hyperlipidemic subjects versus the healthy subjects. All right. And the net change in total cholesterol. We see that here. And again, in this one, this plot is a little hard to read, but you will see it very clearly here in this bubble plot, right? We can see that starting over here, going all the way up. All right, so the change in cholesterol versus the cups of coffee per day. And again, we see this between 3 and 4 cups right here. Low. So we're seeing a theme here, right? Between how much coffee per day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, we are.
Bum, 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 bum. I got a bunch of stuff for you today, brother.
I'm hit. Well, hit me. Cognitive disorders. Yes.
Cognitive disorders. What about cognitive decline? All right. So moderate coffee or tea consumption decreases the risk of cognitive disorders in this meta-analysis. This is a dose response meta-analysis. 22 prospective studies and 11 case control studies involving almost 400,000 participants found that coffee and tea consumption were linked to lower risk of cognitive disorders by 27% and 32%, respectively.
Wow.
Yeah. So results were stronger for men, again, consistent with what we've seen so far, right? And protection peaked around 2.5 cups per day. So again, with the amount of intake.
That's amazing.
And
That's
yeah,
amazing.
coming down here, look at this.
That's
Look
amazing. How
Look
did
at
they
that.
how do they measure the cognitive how do they measure their data? I mean, by just cognitive decline, what were their markers? I mean, you know?
Yeah, so these are prospective cohorts. So basically you're going to have food frequency questionnaires, right? So how often do you consume coffee? Do you
Right.
consume 1 cup per day, 2 cups per day, 3 cups per day? That on and so forth. And then you would also have an intake on how many people within those cohorts developed some you know, cognitive disease. So Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, things like that. And so then you can, you know, do your statistical adjustments and find what is the relationship between coffee and tea and the number of incidents of cognitive disease.
Look at the confidence. Look at the confidence lines back there. Look at that.
Yeah.
Even though that big one, it's very short to the left, got a
Mm-hmm.
huge to the right, which that's okay. That doesn't bother me. And like the one from the Solfrizzi study,
Mm-hmm.
little bitty short confidence line to the left, so they're pretty solid about where their marker is.
Yep.
And the one to the right just that kind of skews it a little bit, but it's not less.
Yeah.
They're all above. They're all a positive.
Yeah. So as far, you know,
I'm amazed. My mind's blown already.
so looking at cardiovascular
I'm leaking
disease,
out, you
looking at
know.
mortality, yeah, looking at mortality, we saw that our overall effects, the confidence intervals for overall effects were pretty tight. Getting into cognitive decline, these confidence are even tighter, you know, and this
Yeah.
overall effect down here is, you know, that thing's tiny. Like we would have super amount of confidence in those results. So looking at this forest plot here, another thing when we're looking at meta-analyses, all right, so we're looking at point estimates, confidence intervals, we're looking at these diamonds, and seeing if the horizontal tips extend over the null line. Our I squared, okay, and then we also are going to have a weighted percent for each individual study. All right. So if you really wanted to dig into a meta-analysis, well, if you wanted to go just a bit further than what we're doing here, you might find which of these studies holds the most weight. So this one here, Sugiyama et al. In
Sugiyama.
2016.
Sugiyama.
Yeah. So that's holding a lot of weight for this subgroup. And so we might dig into that and look and see, the methodology that was applied in there. And if you want to go even further, you could go through all of these and see, because the I squared here is 65.8, so 66%. So it is moderately high on the heterogeneity level. So you could go through all of them and find out why there's so much heterogeneity there, and get even deeper into the weeds on that. So we see our dose response here. So the null line right here is on the horizontal axis, and I put these red lines in. And then the lowest, so this little curve here is our relative risk, and the dashed line represents the confidence intervals. All right, and we can see about 2.5 cups per day. And over here, closer to about 3 cups per day. So chart A is on cognitive disorders, and chart B is on Alzheimer's disease specifically. So interesting stuff here on cognitive decline. Look at this. T in cups per day. T is just the more tea you can drink, the better the effect is. That line just goes, you know what I mean? It's just linear. Confidence intervals get pretty wide out here, though.
Well, yeah, at like 5.5 to 6 cups a day. Yeah,
Mhm.
I could see how that would
5.5 to
skew it.
6.
Yeah, I could see how that would skew that.
Yeah. So, interesting thing that I've been doing. So I have about 2.5, 3 cups of coffee every day. That's my morning thing. And then I have it's a quarter of a gallon bottle, and I have some green matcha tea. I really like that. It's the powder. I got it from the Asian Mart there in Phoenix, and I'll just put um, about a tablespoon of that matcha powder in that, fill it up with water, and I'll drink that. And I drink 2 of those per day. One has matcha tea, the other one just has water, and that's my water consumption for the day. But I also get that tea, so I'm drinking quite a bit of tea all day long. Let's see. Yeah, another meta-analysis here on tea consumption, looking at 7 prospective cohort studies with 410,000 participants, found a 29% reduced risk of all-cause dementia.
Wow.
A subgroup analysis found a 12% reduced risk of Alzheimer's and a 25% reduction in vascular dementia. So tea seems to be particularly good for you. Coffee, pretty darn close.
That's amazing, dude. That's totally amazing.
All
Totally
right.
amazing.
Now, last but not least, Dwayne, I'm sure you've heard this. I hear it all the time. Oh my
Exactly.
goodness.
I'm so glad you pulled
Every
this up.
single time I have to deal with other nutrition coaches.
You're dehydrated.
Coffee dehydrates you. Okay, so this study, there are other studies. I didn't want to get too many of them. I couldn't really find a meta-analysis on this, but this study I think is particularly good here on the topic of dehydration. So this is a crossover trial, and it directly compared coffee intake to water on several measures of hydration. And the assessments that they made found no difference in those measures of hydration. All right.
Really?
So this is, so participants consumed either 4 200 milliliters of coffee containing 4 milligrams per kilogram of caffeine, or water. And this was 3-day arms. So randomized to the 2 arms. Group A drank water for 3 days. Group B drank coffee, and then they switched. All right.
Okay.
And at the end of that, they found mean total body water, no difference. Absolutely no difference. Now, somebody might say 3 days, it's not long enough. My friend, 3 days is plenty long enough to determine levels of hydration. Stop drinking fluids for 3 days. Find out what happens.
Yeah, yes. No, don't stop drinking.
It's three
Don't
days.
stop drinking fluids for 3 days.
3 days is just fine for this. So no difference between the two. We actually see, so the darker bar here is the coffee. It actually went up a little bit.
Hmm.
Coffee was slightly hydrating, right? Water, about the same, not so much.
Well, go back up, go back up. One more. Hold still right there. Either urine void volume or urine void USG were between conditions. P86, 0.86, P.95 respectively, table 4. Yeah, because it's all we've ever heard is that um, tea, coffee are not water because of what they have in them. Tea and definitely coffee is somewhat of a diuretic. And
Yeah,
so there is the opinion then, or there spawns the opinion in that if you drink a lot of coffee,
would lead to
you're going to
dehydration.
pee out, you're going to be dehydrated.
Yeah. Going back to
Not
my
so.
going back to my Marine Corps days, it was a common recommendation by the Navy corpsmen for every cup of coffee you had, you needed to drink an equal amount of water to maintain hydration status.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so here, sodium excretion, a little bit higher in the coffee arm. So if you remember, we go back to that meta-analysis, we saw there was a small decrease in blood pressure,
Right.
not
Right.
statistically significant,
Right.
probably can be attributed to the sodium excretion.
Right. Right. Right.
Would that lead to clinically meaningful, like if you have high blood pressure and you don't drink coffee and you start to drink coffee, would that lead to something? Yeah, probably not. I don't think you would see a meaningful effect.
And sometimes you just have to use your common sense. For example, been telling Coach Lambie about being outside. I cut down some trees, chopping wood, broke my chainsaw. So I've been doing a lot of work with my axe, sharpen that bad boy up. But so I'm here in Houston, Texas, and my gosh, man, it's been 94, 91, 97. So it's been some hot days just for the end of May. And so I'm getting out there, I'm sweating profusely. Could I be drinking coffee? Sure, but I don't want to because it's 95 degrees outside average.
Yeah.
So that's not something I'm going to take in. However, in cooler temperatures, I'll admit my coffee consumption is higher. Yeah, sometimes if I put, sometimes if I have like, unfiltered, coffee, or I'm really not on the Turkish so much, but if I just have, like some espresso shots and a coffee drink, I don't want to do too many because I kind of get jacked up a little bit, but I don't, I will admit that my plain water intake goes down a little bit, but I'm never dehydrated. My body's functioning fine. It's just use your head, use your head. You're
Yeah.
not going to get dehydrated from drinking coffee
Yep.
and tea especially. I mean, it's just not,
Especially tea. Yeah.
it's not going to happen. I think one of the downfalls that people see is that when you get a lot of I'm sorry to derail here, Coach,
It's
but
okay. Go ahead.
when you get a lot of flavorings in there, now you're changing the sugar content. You get a lot of, I have a couple of daughters that they like those flavored drinks, those flavored coffees, iced coffee, and it's got all this stuff in there. And I'll admit to you, every now and then, I'll like a little flavoring in there, some vanilla or something. But I think that's where you kind of go overboard. But the coffee itself is not, you're not dehydrating yourself. You're just not.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of beat me to the punch there.
My bad. So I was gonna, how seldom does that happen?
Yeah. I was gonna say, overall here, coffee seems to be quite beneficial for your health. Some people do seem to have a change in blood lipids if they're drinking unfiltered coffee. However, I think most people are probably drinking filtered coffee, so it's not probably a huge
Right.
ordeal.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about the health effects on coffee, so coffee is healthy for you. Sugar sweetened beverages are not.
Agreed.
Now, it would be interesting to get into the food frequency questionnaires and find out exactly what the questions were on coffee, but more than likely they are just asking how many cups of coffee do you drink per day, which means people are putting in cream and sugar at home, which means the effect that we are seeing is how people are drinking it within the population. However, I think that some caveats can be made for some of these frappuccino, mochaccino, 500 calorie drinks.
Yeah.
My guess would probably be those fit more in the sugar sweetened beverage category rather than the coffee. And also, black coffee is delicious, and just stop ruining coffee.
Yeah.
All right, man. So what do you think?
You know what? Let me turn my hat around and say, mind blown. Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's all good stuff. I
Yeah.
think in the future, if we get a chance, we should probably take about a 15-20 minute look at, or more, at how caffeine, how coffee or tea would affect your workout.
Yeah, we
That
can
might be
definitely look at that. Yeah.
So I think you and I both have had coffee before a workout. So just good to see.
Yeah. All right.
Not as
Cool.
riveting as this one, because the health effects is just like, holy moly, I'm going to go in and have a cup of coffee right now. So, I mean, that's
pretty
that's
big.
awesome.
Yeah.
My
it's
mind
pretty
is
big.
blown. Mine
Yeah.
is blown.
So coffee drinkers out there, coffee addicts, keep drinking your coffee. All the way up to 9 cups per day. So a couple people that I know who you are. Your pot of coffee a day, it's fine. Would I like to see you drink some water or some tea? Yeah. But yeah, coffee's fine. Keep
Agreed.
drinking it.
Yeah.
It's good for you. So is tea. Dwayne's mind is blown. I hope you guys get something out of this. Dwayne and Lambie out.